Hello everyone, and welcome to your Masters in Healthcare Management. My name's Sandy, and today we'll be discussing quality management. Today we're here with Dr. Alessandra Verri, who will be sharing her expertise on the topic. Dr. Verri, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
All right. So let's get right to our questions. My first question for you is, what do you expect the students to learn from this course?
That's a very good question, actually. I guess that the students attending the course are here for a reason, will be with me for a reason, quite a long period of time. And they're mainly involved into initiatives that are aimed at improving quality within healthcare. So what we'll be discussing together and what we'll be learning together about is the dimensions of quality within healthcare. There are different and really a wide number of definitions when it comes to quality. But when it comes to quality in healthcare, mainly we refer to 6 dimensions which have been defined by the Institute of Medicine. These dimensions, just to name some, are to be effective, so to basically aim, of course, at very good outcomes when it comes to the care that we provide to the patients, to be efficient, so that we don't waste resources, to be accessible so that patients can find what they need where they need it, and to be inclusive, so that the level of care that is provided is independent and is not at all influenced by who the patients are and what their beliefs maybe are. And mainly, and this is something that we'll be really focusing a lot on, is to be patient-centered.
Okay.
What I mean by patient-centered, I mean a type of care that is really focused on the patient, their context, their family, their values. So it's not a service that is provided to them, but it's a service that is built together with them, so in collaboration with them. It's something that they participate into, and as a consequence they feel much more engaged with. It is important that together with those who attend the course we explore these 6 dimensions, and particularly the very last one I mentioned, because we'll be learning together that the more staff is patient-centered, the more staff is also engaged, and the greater satisfaction staff will have. Simply because the whole environment becomes a little bit less stressful, less exhausting. We know exhausting hospitals and healthcare centers can become, and as a consequence there is also a greater level of job satisfaction.
Okay, all right. We briefly mentioned quality earlier. How would you define quality?
Defining quality is something that thousands of people have probably tried to do, and everyone, or probably nobody, really came up with an exhaustive type of definition, let's say. Simply because really depending on the service or the good that you're thinking of, quality might mean different things, but quality also means a variety of things to different people. I mean, it goes back to philosophers like Plato, for example, who were defining excellence as beauty. But you know yourself, and everyone would be in agreement with me, that beauty is a very subjective type of definition and topic. So to give you an idea, there have been people or I mean, when I say people, of course, I mean researchers and people with a strong academic background have been defining quality as the ability of something or someone to meet standard requirements. Okay. Again, depending on the industry, depending on the sector, quality vary a lot, and the definition of quality vary a lot. Lately, there has been quite a bit of agreement in defining quality as the possibility and again the ability of a certain product and a certain service to remain flexible and to adapt to the continuously changing and the overly changing needs and requirements of the customers and of the stakeholders. So I'd love to think, especially when thinking about healthcare, I'd love to think about quality from this type of perspective and thinking of a service that remains again flexible to be shaped around the continuously changing needs of the patients.
Okay. And so let's take it a step further. What is total quality management?
Quality total management just builds on the concept that they just shared. So it's a holistic approach that is based on the idea that everyone, independent within an organization, of course, everyone, independently from the role, independently from their function and their level of responsibility, should be involved. It aims at, again, making sure that the organization remains flexible, remains adaptable, but it requires a greater level of investment, especially when you think about training and development, especially when you think about how leadership is engaged and needs to engage. And actually leadership, and this is something that we'll be exploring a lot during the course, plays a key role in total quality management. Because it all starts from there, and it all starts with the leadership team becoming the example, the model, basically, to follow. There is a lot to explore about total quality management. As I said, there are a few frameworks that we'll be investigating together with the students.
So you previously mentioned the importance of training and development and leadership when it comes to total quality management. Could you expand a bit further on that?
Absolutely, yes. When I speak about training and development, and again thinking that this is a continuous cycle, so it's a continuous reassessment of the needs of what's required, both from an organization perspective, from the staff perspective, from the patient's perspective. Training needs to be also rethought in view of these continuously changing requirements and needs. So there has to be the availability and flexibility for those who are designing and offering the training to make sure that these modules remain flexible and adaptable. And there has to be also the willingness from the staff perspective to always be involved into constant learning. When I speak about training and development, I think it is becoming very central to many industries, and I think it should be becoming very central also to hospitals and healthcare providers, the concept of feedback and coaching. Okay. So observing on what's happening in the world, what's happening on the floor every day, and being able to provide feedback in a constructive way. So by simply sharing observations and maybe also offering some guidance, I think can become a very essential part of the learning experience of the staff involved at all levels. I'm not just talking nurses, I'm talking managers, I'm talking those who are in leadership positions. It's upward and downward feedback. So it's important that observations are shared, and maybe as a group also people think of better ways and improved ways of offering certain services.
Okay.
When it comes to leadership, again, the key element is them remaining available to communicate, making sure that the communication remain concise, but at the same time very clear. Making themselves available as well for people who need maybe a little bit of, and when I say people in this case, I'm referring to staff, people who require some sort of reassurance, people who require some further information. It is important. We said about the patient that it's important that we know they are, we know their context, we know their values. This is equally important for staff. Leaders within the healthcare providers, managers who know who their staff are, what matters to them, are definitely much more inclined, and it's going to be easier for them to make sure that their staff is engaged. Their staff is satisfied, that people are I'm using a very simple word, but happier at work. And as a consequence, those who are happy are also a little bit more efficient and productive. But also another element is tackled, which is attrition. So in the healthcare, maybe this is not 100% true, especially in Malta, but in many other industries, you see quite a bit of a turnover, simply because, again, the engagement of staff and how they feel about the workplace is not really given the necessary focus and the necessary attention.
And how does this apply to healthcare, and why is it so important?
When you think about healthcare and when you think about the healthcare providers, such as hospitals, those are very large and complex organizations. Not simply because of the scale, so not simply because they cater for a great number of patients or because they have a very large number of people working within, but also if you consider the emotional character of the hospitals, for example, to name some of the healthcare providers, or if you think of the long operating hours, of the very complicated and complex bureaucracy within the healthcare system. When you think of all of these aspects, total quality management is essential to make sure that, again, the organization remain lean, efficient, flexible, adaptable. So it is essential, actually, that hospitals and healthcare providers, in a way, follow that type of model, follow that type of framework, so that they can ensure, first of all, a greater satisfaction from the patient's perspective, and also, as I was saying earlier, a much bigger level of engagement from the staff perspective.
Okay. And how do we implement this?
Implementing is, let's say, not an easy step, I would say. First of all, the idea is really as for any other change, as for any other step that we make in life, first of all, you have to have the will of changing and the will of improving. So it all starts from there. It's followed by the ability to challenge the status quo. So you have to have ideas as well. In terms of alternatives to the current situation, alternatives to the status quo, and then the willingness as well as the ability to execute. And when it comes to execution, it's all about, again, taking these ideas, understanding how these ideas are fit for purpose, and if any of these ideas are fit for purpose, what exactly we need and we want to change and why. And then once we have a fairer idea and a much more robust and solid idea about what exactly needs to be changed and what exactly needs to be improved, and we also have thought of some, let's say, initiatives or some programs to tackle those, let's say, opportunities, then it's about testing. So introducing, for example, a pilot phase to taste and to have a phased approach into again of the change, so that it can be slowly introduced, implemented, and reactions can also be observed, and possibly then some measures to understand how efficient and how effective the changes that were introduced were, how fit for purpose, as I was mentioning earlier. And once a reassessment can be done, then of course the final part of which is not really the final part, because actually change is a continuous cycle, but there has to be a point where, again, things are reassessed and possibly edits and adjustments are made to the very initial plan to then start again with something slightly different.
So you mentioned earlier that quality management isn't easy to implement. So how easy or difficult is it to implement?
I'd love to say that it's very easy,
okay.
Because once it's there, and once everyone has bought into the concept, and once everyone again is aware of their responsibility to contribute and how important it is that they contribute to the cause, it's going to become something. It's going to become a habit. But I have to be honest, and until when this happens, quite a huge effort is required, again, at all levels and from everyone who's involved. And it's not really hard work, it's more, of course, it can be associated with a greater workload, but it doesn't necessarily mean a greater workload. What it means is really a cultural change. And cultural change, very often in different type of organizations, is accompanied by resistance. With change, and especially with this type of changes, very often people experience a feeling and the sentiment of ambiguity, because not everything is clear, of being unsettled, because things continuously change and continue to change, and they learn something, and maybe months later what they learned a couple of weeks earlier doesn't apply any longer. So what's key, again, as I was saying earlier, is how leadership is communicating, how leadership is engaging with the people who are involved into the change, how reassuring they are in terms of, and I think I always very much like to stress the idea of making sure that those who are involved can connect the dots and understand why and where this is coming from and where this is leading.
Okay. And how do you deal with change?
In my life, I have gone through many changes, including my recent move to Malta. So I am Italian originally, but I lived for many years in Ireland. Okay. I've been now on the island in Malta, since a year and a half ago. So you understand that I have quite of an experience in terms of changing and reassessing and reorganizing my life, and not just mine, also that of my family. I have 3 children here with me. So, but in a way, I like the challenge associated with the change. I find quite boring the idea of doing always the same type of things, and change is very much associated with learning as well, and I very much like exploring new territories and learn new things, and change is often associated with failure as well. But once we learn from failure, and if we understand that we can really build something out of a failure, then that's becoming acceptable as well.
Okay. So my next question is, what if you were a patient, what do you value from quality management healthcare sector?
I value, I want to feel unique. I think this is one of the challenges that customers as well as patients, at the end of the day, patients are customers of the healthcare providers, struggle a lot with currently and lately, simply because you feel, and you are as a customer, as a patient, 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million. And I do totally understand that staff, and again, I'm not just in this, for this very specific question now, I'm not just thinking healthcare, I'm also thinking any service provider. I understand that staff is under pressure in the hospital even more, again, because of the emotional character that we spoke about, and because of the speedy type of answer that in a way they have to, staff has to provide, because of the importance of time, and when it comes to matters that can have an impact on life. But at the same time, myself going into a hospital, myself going into a shop, myself going into anyone who's providing a service, it's me with my own needs, with my own requirements, with my own background, and I want to be treated as one. I don't want to be treated as anyone else. And I want to be valued for who I am and for what matters to me. I want to be informed. So as a patient, I want to exactly know what's happening. I want to also have some sort of, I'd love, and they love generally, to be informed about what's expected. So what's coming next? And if there are maybe even timelines associated, for example, with the treatment, I'd love to understand what this exactly means. It may not be anything too serious or anything like that, but an appointment might have a knock-on effect on other things that are happening in my life, on my ability to, again, attend a certain event or something. So being informed, knowing in advance, being knowledgeable and aware of what's happening to myself, to any of my relatives, especially when this all evolves around health and treatments, I think is essential. So again, I'd love to feel unique. I'd love to feel as, okay, today I'm patient number one, and I'll be treated as such.
Okay. You provided us examples of a patient-centered approach, how to really implement it for the students. So my next question is building upon that. Could you share with some experiences you've had, positive or negative, that we could learn from?
Let's start with the positive.
Okay.
I'm generally quite an optimistic person, so I'd love to start with the positive, and I'm very happy also to say that it was recent and it was here in Malta.
Okay.
So all of a sudden I realized that the voice of my young daughter was changing. So she hadn't had a cold or nothing that could possibly let me think, okay, this is the consequence of something that she has been experiencing. So I was a little bit alarmed by this sudden change. And I just went online, was searching for a consultant. Now it's very easy to find help, especially because of the reviews that are available and everything. So decided to meet this consultant who was available in one of the pharmacies, which by coincidence was also very close to where I live. It took seconds for me to get an appointment. The appointment was set up for the following Friday. When I got there, the doctor was waiting for me, knew exactly first of all, knew our names and welcomed us by calling us by name, which is something that might be seen as either obvious or not as important, but it's the very first signal of a certain level of bond between the two parties who are involved into the relationship. And then with patients, he was of course visiting my daughter and explaining step by step, first of all, how this had happened, and second, how we should have been treating. And as I was saying earlier, setting the expectations, so letting us know what we could expect in the coming days and what we should have expected to happen. And also setting up a follow-up appointment, which he said, look, feel free to cancel in case you see that or you realize that this is no longer needed. So of course we left the doctor's room with a great relief and knowing that there is someone there that we can refer to in case things shouldn't go.
Yeah, so you were looking at, you had an efficient service, you were being informed of aspects that
absolutely
that help within quality management in any sector, let alone the healthcare sector.
If you think of the dimensions that we were mentioning earlier at the very start of our chat today, we spoke about a service that is effective. And so the outcome was very positive for me, because at the end of the day, again, I left with a certain level of reassurance about what's happening and why and what should be done. Very efficient from a time perspective. I didn't waste any of my time, and again, I think that respecting the patient's time and respecting the customer's time in general is extremely important. Geographically speaking and logistically speaking, maybe I was a little lucky as well, but was very accessible because it was close by, at a very short distance from the place where I live and also from the school that the children attend. So it was basically on my way. And again, I was informed, I was treated as unique on that very special occasion. And I won't be stressing enough the fact that being welcomed into the door, and we were probably patient number 20, 25, I don't know, I don't have any idea, but being welcomed by the doctor who was calling us by name was a very nice touch.
That's nice. Okay. Did you want to share a negative experience with us, or shall we go on to the next question?
It's okay. It's okay. It's when you think of the weight. So I was, as I said, I used to live in a different country. I was sharing with you earlier that I used to live abroad, and my sister-in-law came to visit, and she was going through a very difficult moment because she could, she was heavily breathing, and so we thought, okay, let's visit a doctor, which we did, and the doctor recommended us to the local hospital. The wait at the hospital was a wait of approximately 10 hours.
10 hours? Oh.
10 hours. We decided to leave the hospital then, simply because she had a flight booked. Of course, she took the responsibility to take the hospital, so she had to sign in order to do that. And we decided to leave. She thought better for me to go home and then check at home with my own doctor, with people I trust, of course, because they've been knowing and visiting me for long years. We did. She came back to Italy then, so she flew back to Italy the morning after. And as soon as she landed, she went to visit the doctor, and well, she was very, very close to have a stroke. So that was an eye-opening experience for us, because I think it wasn't given the necessary attention and the necessary focus there at the hospital, and it was again our responsibility. We decided to sign and to go. But possibly if she had been visited in a more timely manner, we could have avoided the risk.
Yeah. True. And my next question is, what tools or techniques are available to measure quality and quality management?
Quality, again, it very much depends on what aspect of quality and what dimension of quality you want to measure. We'll be touching on this one during the course, because again, if it's a matter of assessing the efficiency, of course, you measure how efficiently the resources are allocated, for example. If it's a matter of measuring the effectiveness, then instead you measure the outcome, so how many positive interventions were operated in a certain, for example, area or in a certain department within the healthcare service. When it comes again to patients, you have a big variety of opportunities and a big variety of tools, including the known surveys, for example. So it's a good, and it's being implemented quite a lot. It's always a good opportunity to provide the opportunity to the patients to maybe answer in an anonymous format, if they want, to a couple of questions in relation to the service they received, not just again from an outcome perspective, because this can be also assessed separately, but also from what we call soft skills. So how, again, caring staff was, how welcome they felt, how timely the interventions were, if and in case they were asking for help, and how flexible as well maybe staff was. I think what I didn't mention before, and sometimes is required in order to provide a very good quality in terms of, again, the service that is shared within this type of organizations, is a little bit of thinking outside the box, which we'll be exploring as well during the course. hospitals, as well as many organizations, of course, and also the organizations that I'm even more familiar with, are very much regulated, of course. There are strict procedures, very rigid rules and guidelines for a reason. To avoid risks, to minimize risks, of course. So it's extremely, extremely important that those are adhered to. But sometimes a little bit of empowerment, and sometimes an empowered decision that goes a little bit outside the box can, again, put a smile again on the face of a patient, which is as important as following the rules.
And so, well, my last question for you today, Alessandra, is what are you expecting from this course?
Well, I do expect the students to be engaged, to be committed. Again, it's a long course, and it requires and will require hours of study and hours of listening. But mainly what's very important to me is a very active participation. And last but not least, let's have fun together.
Oh, that's very nice. Okay, so that pretty much concludes the questions I have for you today.
Thank you
Dr.
very much.
Verri, thank you for
Sandy.
being with us. So there you have it. Today we spoke about quality management. We defined quality. We took it a step further and defined total quality management. And we looked at ways into implementation of it, especially within the healthcare. That's it for today, and see you next time.